Home. Messages. Wednesday, Saturday, 8:44 a.m.
I want a garage in East Hampton on Cottage Street.
It takes a lot of self-confidence just to go out into the world every day. You know, some people have difficulty doing that. Probably the biggest challenge for me to become an artist was being visible in the world. When I was an academic, so I would just sit in my little walk-in closet, which I had turned into a library. When I became an artist, or wanted to become an artist, I realized I had to take off the cloak of invisibility and go out into the world, and that was the hardest thing. That was the biggest challenge. But you can't support yourself as an artist unless you let other people see your work. After graduating, after teaching chemistry and being in college for 9 or 10 years, I thought that only intellectual understanding was important, that emotional understanding wasn't important. And then one day, my philosophy partner, Catherine, on hearing me say that only intellectual understanding gave us any information, she kicked me as hard as she could in the shin. And as I was rubbing my shin and saying, "God damn it, Catherine, what did you do that for?" a light went on in my head. It's, emotions, hurt, pain, it's important. It's equally as important as head knowledge. And so I just started going with figuring out my emotions. I bottled it all up. And I realized that I needed to get back down into my body and move more. I'd always liked to play and run and build things when I was a kid. And in college, I was just reading all the time, which I loved. But I needed to get away from that. I ran towards making books because I loved books and looking for a fusion between mind and body. Words just felt cheap to me. You know, I felt like I could argue pretty successfully any philosophical point of view, even contradicting point of views, and it just stopped being important. I started out making really small books and ones that moved in an interesting way so that they would engage someone physically, and then I ended up making huge books. I made one accordion book that was 6 feet tall and 22 feet long. And I realized with that one that books could create environments, physical environments. My little books created a story or environment where a story could be told that would carry someone away in their head. But then I started doing big books, and I realized that I could create an environment where you could literally crawl inside a book, be influenced that way. The physical structure of the book, the size of the book, the way that you present the book can really transform you, not just the story that's being told. People think that if something corrodes, if something deteriorates, then it's not ideal and it's not perfect and it's not worthy of reverence. But I think that because our physical bodies deteriorate and we have such a short time here on Earth, it makes it all that much more important. It's a gift. Our time here is so special. I also feel like we create our existence, create our life at every moment. of every day, of every breath.
I don't know, like
The good stuff or the bad stuff?
well, how that relates to kind of the stuff you just talked about,
I can remember one of my aunts on her deathbed when I was a little kid, and she was skin and bones. You could see every joint, every details in her hands and arms. There was no flesh left on. I wondered what it would be like to be on my deathbed and just what I would feel and what I would think about. I must have been 8 or 10 years old, and at that moment I realized that the worst thing that could happen to me on my deathbed would be to regret how I've lived my life. I thought there's no recovering it at that point. Once you're there, you've lived your life. It is what it is. That's inspired me to be aware and connect with people. Can't say that I'm always successful. None of us are. I try to make things perfectly. I try to have good relationships and do as well as I can. Of course, there are times when something isn't going particularly well and the question comes up, when do you stop and redo it? And I try not to beat myself up when it's not perfect, because next time, hopefully with the experience, it'll be better.